Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Jess Hilarious, Charlamagne the guy. We are the Breakfast Club. Jess is on maternity leave, so Lorna Roques is filling in. And we have a special guest in the building. We have Nancy Mace. Welcome.
And thank you for having me. Great to be here finally.
What's happening, Nancy?
Not much. Well, we have, election coming up and that sort of thing. Yeah. But it's great. We've been talking about doing this for a while.
Absolutely.
So thanks for having me here. It's great to be here.
You know, me and Nancy went to high school together?
I think I've heard
you. She looks so much younger than you.
We're the same age. We're literally the same age.
Was he a senior, you were a freshman?
What's that?
Was he a senior, you were a freshman? Or was he just like the guy that kept coming back to the school?
I got kicked out of Berkeley, and then they made me go to Stratford because that's where my mom works. So my mom was a teacher at Stratford, and Nancy's mom was a teacher
Our moms
at
taught school together and actually know each other. And I don't know if we knew each other when we were in school at all.
I was
you weren't there very long.
Yeah, I was there maybe 3 months.
How was Charlamagne in high school that you remember? Was he a bully?
No, I don't. I don't know if we knew each other. He was only there for a few months, but we dropped out of the same high school the same year, and our moms taught school together. And
she dropped out.
You got kicked out. Right.
They came and arrested me.
Why'd you drop out?
I had been raped by a classmate of mine at 16, and I just it's not your fault. It happens a lot, and I just decided I couldn't go back to school, and I decided, and I really haven't been back. Since that time.
The Stratford period?
Yeah, I mean it's been a long time, but I grew up in that area. I grew up in Crowfield and College Park Road and Latson, that area. But I couldn't physically bring myself to go back to school. And at that point, I'd kind of given up on myself and my parents. Mom was a school teacher. My dad is retired Army, and they're like, if you're going to stop going to school, you have to start going to work. I don't know what your parents said to you, but mine were like, go get a job. I got a job at the Waffle House on College Park Road in Latson, exit 203. And I was a Waffle House waitress for a couple months when I decided maybe I wanted to get my high school diploma and not be a Waffle House waitress the rest of my life.
You know what's crazy? The shooting that got me arrested happened on College Park Road.
Wow. Really?
Yes. We were leaving that McDonald's. That's I think the McDonald's is right there by the Waffle House.
It's right by the Waffle House.
Yeah, and the shooting, we were leaving that McDonald's, and the shooting happened by the Burger King that was right there on College Park Road.
Yep, Tall Pine, Sangaree, that area.
So how did you go from Waffle House to being a U.S. Congress representative for South Carolina?
Story.
I would love to hear it.
Well, it's steps, and it's also, God's hand in some ways, divine intervention. You talk about that a lot. But I would eventually go to college, and I went to the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina. It's a place where my dad went. There had been no women there in 154 years, and I was the first, when I applied, I was the first class of women to go there. I ended up graduating the first woman from the Citadel 25 years ago this year. I'm feeling my age, feeling kind of old. And then the rest is sort of history. And I started my own company in 2008. I did a little entrepreneurial work, and then I ran for State House in 2017, 2018. I won. I was served for 3 years. And then this seat, I won it from a Democrat in 2020. I flipped the seat. We have, our district is different. It's very purple. It's a swing district, very diverse. And, when I think about us and the friendship that we have, we're different politically. I mean, polar opposites in some cases. But to come out of the same county, the same stoplight in South Carolina, two people that should have never made it, never been successful. And we're two of the most successful people to come out of Berkeley County. It's an amazing feat. And now we're friends. I call you and hit you up like, is this joke going to fall? Is this going to land well when I say this? Or is this a terrible idea? But we've become, great friends. We met last year at at Dave Chappelle's show in Charleston.
That's right.
When we first met.
She was in the back arguing with Dave.
Well, he was arguing with me.
Okay.
I mean, we were arguing. We were drinking tequila, and he was giving me political advice, and it was great advice. It's advice I give other people. It's read the room, because today politicians they're just not. I mean, everyone's red shirt, blue shirt. We're gonna pick sides and stay there, but there's a lot of in between. There's a lot of purple. There's a lot of common ground, and regardless of what issue it is that we're debating, there is so much that we can, if we listen to the people. It's very different than what's in Washington. Washington is totally out of touch with the rest of the country, completely out of touch.
The Post and Courier asked a question this morning that a lot of people ask. What side is Nancy Mace on? Because you challenge Republicans a lot, but then you vote, a lot.
Well, actually, and I wrote that op-ed this morning because I want people to ask the question and then answer it. I'm actually of all 435 members of the House, I'm the 22nd most bipartisan. So I'm like almost top 20 most bipartisan, yet I get pilloried in the press by certain media outlets that I'm a raging partisan. Am I conservative on most issues? Yes, but there are a lot of issues where I'm maybe to the left or socially moderate on. I do a lot of civil rights work. I do a lot of work for women because I'm a survivor of rape. I've been through domestic abuse, and I know how terrible our laws are at the federal and the state level. But I've worked a lot. Roques, you talked to him earlier this week, and Ro and I do a lot of tech and cybersecurity computing type of legislation together. But it's not sexy. It's not clickbait. It doesn't get you likes when you're on X or views when you're on Instagram. It's not the sexy thing that the media likes to talk about is when we get along. They like divisiveness. It pays ads. I mean, that sort of thing. But I'm actually been really effective in working with both sides of the aisle. But I also call them out. I mean, Republicans and Democrats alike are the reason that things cost so much with inflation. I mean, we did a debt ceiling bill last year, passed by both parties. And do you think it had a limit or a limit to the debt in the debt ceiling bill? Did it have a ceiling? It didn't have a ceiling at all. And so they fed you this bill of lies that, hey, this is responsible spending. We're going to curb the debt. And there was no limit to it. There was no end to the debt in that bill. And so I just like to call it like I see it. Call the balls.
Both parties' fault?
Yes, 100%. It was a Republican-led bill, but Democrats, they voted for it together. But that's why the cost of goods keep going up, is because your tax dollars, the money that the government's spending is too much. And in fact, we did a bill last year where the U.S. government was going to borrow money from China to pay Taiwan. Like, I'm not a mathematician, but that doesn't add up, right? And so I call both sides out when they need it. Same thing with women's issues. Nothing's been done for women. What have we done? Like, did we vote on IVF this year? No, we didn't. Have we done more for contraception? Not nearly enough. And so I just call the politics as I see it. Like, I want to work. I want to get stuff done. I want to do right by the people that sent me there.
How do you deal with, because with your, the experience that you had with being a survivor of rape, I know that, you do get a lot of pushback because you're pro-life and you have a pro-life voting record, but you push back on other, exceptions, for abortion when that conversation happens on the Republican side. That must be a lonely place to be.
I will tell you,
it's a little confusing for some people too, probably.
I have no friends in Washington. It is an extremely lonely experience when you're calling out both sides, or even when you call out members of your own party. When the crazy Alabama ruling came out that was anti-IVF, I was the first person in Congress in either party to file a bill to protect access to IVF. When the mifepristone and trisomy 18 cases happened in Texas, I believe I was probably the only Republican to speak out saying how unconstitutional those rulings were, because they were unconstitutional. When the Arizona ruling happened about abortion shortly after Alabama, again, I was leaned in right over that. There's a lot of common ground. 98% of us agree on IVF. The same thing with exceptions for rape and incest and fetal abnormalities and life of the mother. There's a lot more that we agree on. I'm the only Republican on a pro-life list that has an asterisk by their name, because I do a lot on birth control and contraceptives and contraception. There's so much middle ground, and there's so much we can do for women together, and yet neither party wants to do it. Like, and you see it on both sides of the aisle, they just use it as a political wedge. But what have we done for women? What have we done substantively for women in the last couple of years? I would argue very little. And so I've been fighting really hard. I have bills that would address domestic violence, rape, incest, voyeurism, revenge porn, a lot of issues, IVF, contraception, birth control. I have a whole portfolio that I've focused on that I believe both sides can agree on, because we're not doing enough. We're just further dividing ourselves by having these arguments when there's 95% of the things. Even when you talk about abortion, I'm pro-life, but I have a 15 to 20 week second trimester limit. At some point, you got to say this is an infant that deserves life. Most people don't want abortion in the third trimester, but all of us think first or second trimester. So even if you're pro-choice, you likely have limitations around the second trimester too. And so I just believe there's a lot of common ground, and we're not having those conversations.
But do you think that it's a kind of like a hoop dream to think that people will find a common ground though? Because like look at even like our presidential candidates. Like I don't see them having common ground on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I am a true believer, and I believe that if I work hard enough, I can make a difference in whatever capacity that is. So that's why I will go off on what is the most common sense thing here, and why haven't we done it yet? And I call people out, which is why I have tough elections every 2 years, because I'm constantly saying, well, that's BS. And I curse too. So I'm passionate like you are. I mean, you're very passionate. That's my passion.
Are you a Trump supporter?
I voted for him.
Why?
Wow.
Well, I mean, in my party, the man who has been leaning on women's issues on the forefront has been Trump. So for the first time in our party's history, he added to our party platform this summer at the Republican convention IVF, that we want to protect IVF, that we want to protect women who are victims of rape, victims of incest, the exceptions that I just spoke about. No one else has done that before. He put in the party platform, we want to protect contraception and contraceptive access. Those are things that had never been done before. And so for me as a woman, like I have someone that I go to, I bend his ear on women's issues, because that's really the thing that I've been harping on the last couple of years are women's rights, balancing the pro-life with pro-woman. I think you can do both.
Does he listen? I heard people say, I heard you say that he listens to you. I
feel like he does listen to me, and then he's taken steps to put those things in the party platform, despite people saying, well, maybe we don't want to do that. He did it anyway. And I think it's really important that we have someone that isn't beholden to other organizations or big money, that he does what he believes is right. Even if you disagree with him, I think we can all agree he's not really beholden to any one person. He's doing what he thinks is the right thing to do.
He might be beholden to Putin.
I don't know about that. Nobody wants Russia to win. I don't want Russia to win, and I'm a Republican. I think the idea is abhorrent. And you have this trifecta now with Russia, Iran, and China. And it's very dangerous, very dangerous. We've got to stem that tide and break that up at some point. It's going to become a real problem globally.
Now, the narrative has been is Donald Trump is racist. They believe he's a fascist. What's your thoughts on all of that?
I don't believe so. So I've done a lot of civil rights work. So I had a bill signed into law when I was a state lawmaker. It was a prison reform bill for women. And I modeled it after the First Step Act that Trump signed into law, prison reform bill in December of 2018. And it was bipartisan. And when you look at the impact of that, it's improved the lives of 90% of the individuals that it has helped improve were Black Americans. So I don't believe that he's racist at all. And I know that his campaign has done outreach to the Black community as part of their campaign apparatus and advertising and all those things. Something that a lot of Republicans haven't traditionally done. It's important. I know that you all have had Lara Trump on here, Byron Donaldson, and Candace Owens. You've had people that support him, Nikki Haley. That have supported him on here. And I think it's really important that we have Republicans that will go and talk to untraditional, maybe audiences. It's really important that we do that outreach. And Trump has led the way for the party in that.
But they all say they hate him behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some do.
Not Laura, but.
Yeah, I mean, she's family.
She can't say it if she felt like it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I have seen the way that he has worked the party on issues that I care about. And I think it's really important that Americans know that he really wants the best for our country and its people. You don't have to agree with his approach or how he does it, but I do believe he wears his heart on his sleeve and he's passionate about making a difference. And I've seen that, and the First Step Back was a bill, that one provision in that bill was to restrain women who are giving birth. If they were in the prison system, it used to be that you were restrained to the bed while you were giving birth. That is a terrible way to bring a child into this world. So I did a bill for women.
What?
What
yeah. Happened?
Well, it used to be before the First Step Back, for example, one of the provisions in it were that women were restrained while giving birth if they were pregnant in prison. They were like,
if they're in jail.
In jail, restrained.
Yeah. Okay.
So they went, I mean, I don't know a woman who's going to run away when she's giving birth and having contractions. That's just not a thing. Not a thing. But I modeled some legislation after what he did, and that was bipartisan. And the folks that have benefited, 90% of them are Black Americans from the First Step Act. And I think he would do more of that if and when he's reelected.
I made that up too about them hating behind the scenes.
I
know
don't.
how you feel about
I
it.
have.
made that
Yeah.
up. But listen,
People talk crap, but this is politics. Politics
Yeah.
is a blood sport. People talk stuff all the time.
that's the thing that scares me the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody's so far right, everybody's so far left. When you listen to the when you're not even the narratives, when you listen to the language that a lot of people on the right use, it does sound bigoted. It does sound sexist. So I wonder if the lawmakers, if y'all will be able to get things actually done, if y'all are so at odds with each other.
But there are some bigoted and sexist things from the left. I mean, Mark Cuban yesterday said that women who support Trump aren't intelligent or strong. And I would tell you, I'm pretty damn strong, and I think I'm pretty intelligent. Like this week, like I'm in the middle of my re-election, but the messages my campaign is getting, calling me garbage, calling me a Nazi, people saying they want to see me floating in the Atlantic and they want to murder my dog. I mean, so the rhetoric.
But Trump uses the same type of rhetoric, though.
But both sides are using rhetoric that ratchets it up. So I do believe we need to calm down on the rhetoric. It does. There's a reason why there's political violence. And I will tell you, in 4 years, I've had my home vandalized 3 times. I've had my car keyed twice. My kids and I, we've had horrible threats made on my family almost daily. But I know that my colleagues across the aisle, they get the same thing. I mean, it's happening all the time, and it needs to stop. At some point, we got to say time out. And I think a lot of it's related to social media. Like the downfall of society and civility right now is there are a bunch of keyboard warriors who can say anything. And at some point, someone who's a little unhinged is going to take that verbatim and going to go out and do that. I mean, someone tried to shoot Donald Trump. Someone took a hammer to Nancy Pelosi's husband's head. I mean, these things happen. They're happening you see it happen on both sides of the aisle last couple of years. Mm-hmm. It's happening everywhere, unfortunately.
What's the difference between MAGA and traditional conservatives? Because I feel like MAGA's the issue. I feel like a lot of this started happening when Donald Trump came around in 2016 and ramped up a lot of the rhetoric. I don't think MAGA and traditional conservatives are the same thing. Why? What's the difference? Well,
I mean, you have progressives in the Democrat Party and then more left of center or traditional Democrats. I think that some of the progressive movement is pretty far extreme, pretty far out there too. And so I think that there are different pockets. We have the war hawk column, we have the MAGA column, we have libertarians, we have right of center, we have traditional conservatives, if you will. We do have different pockets in our party with different ideology, much like Democrats do. There's similarities there. But it's populism. I mean, he says a lot that people, I think, is on their mind and they're feeling. And I think it's this us versus the establishment. And he has tapped into the people, the populace, the us part of it. People feel like the government isn't working for them. And they're right. I mean, if you see the crap that we put up with, the egos that are in Washington, just because person X doesn't like person Y, that bill might not ever get a vote. I mean, we held a contempt vote a couple months ago and in the Oversight Committee, and they were arguing about eyelashes. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so you see it and you're just like, what are we doing? We're not doing the work of the people here. Like, I want to work, I want to pass bills, I want to get things done, I want to deliver results. And you have to, when you're in a divided Congress, you have to find ways to work together. I mean, I've got 3 bills sitting in the Senate right now, but because I have an R by my name, they'll probably never see the light of day, unfortunately. But that's just the way the world works right now.
And that's what I mean. Like, because of all of the division, how can are lawmakers are they able to work together? Or is it so much division even in Congress that they can't get nothing done for people? Yeah.
I think in some cases we are. Again, I'll go back to Roe and I have done a lot of legislation together. But again, it's getting both sides to say we're going to work together, we're going to do something. But instead they use, one bill will be used as a bargaining chip for another one, and then things get very messy. So they're not doing the work of the people. It's just like, so take cannabis, for example. The vast majority of Americans want cannabis reform. They want it done. Safe banking is the easiest, most logical thing, but somebody wants something in the bill. They want to add something into it. They can't get it, so they're just going to stop it, right? And so for the longest time, we've been saying we're going to get it done. Nothing's happening, right? And it's all because of ego, and it's because I want my own. I'm not going to do right by the people that elected me. I don't put up with that. I have folks, when you work against me, I call you out. I go to the press and I say what's going on, and I get in trouble for that. But I also don't like the BS that goes on in Washington. A lot of lies. And you have people like, you had Kim Cheadle, for example, that came down before the Oversight Committee, and very bipartisan hearing. Everybody wanted her to go, but she literally came down and wouldn't answer a single question. And I think in part, it was maybe in part because the FBI and Homeland Security, they wouldn't give her the information because they knew she was going to testify. But again, it's like, it's the people versus DC. And I think, you know, that's how progressives tap into the people. There's that movement there, but people feel disenfranchised. They feel like their voices aren't being heard. And it's only getting worse because DC ignores what the vast majority of people want. The vast majority of people want IVF protected. Why can't we do a bill together? I've got a great bill. We've got Republicans and Democrats alike that are doing legislation, no votes on it. That's just one example. Like, that is the will of the people. It's not getting done. So it's my job to call people out when they don't deliver.
So question, if Vice President Kamala Harris wins, right, and she wants to legalize marijuana, would Republicans in Congress vote for it, or would they say no because it's a Democratic president?
I don't think it matters. I mean, there are some of us, not all Republicans are for it. I actually have a bill that would be federal reform. It's descheduling. In order to do cannabis, rescheduling's okay for now, but you have to deschedule it and decriminalize it. And at any rate, so I have a bill for that. It doesn't matter who's president. If that can become law, I would support it. But not every Republican supports cannabis. There are fewer of us that do. I'm one of them that does. But I've worked with both sides on cannabis. I've worked with both sides on issues related to mass violence, for example, women's issues. There is a lot of common ground, but you have to have the courage to actually raise your hand and say, we're going to do this work no matter, even if it costs me my next race, we need to do it because it's right for the people. And there's just not a lot of that in Washington.
Talk to us about this bipartisan border bill that Republicans and Democrats agreed upon. It was supposed to get signed in, and then Trump said, no, don't do it. Why didn't that get done?
Well, it never passed out of the Senate. And so I did to that bill. We never voted on it in the House. The House actually sent over H.R. 2, which was a conservative border security bill in May of last year. Schumer put it in a desk, hid it away, tucked it in a drawer, like happens all the time. But again, don't be wrong, both sides do it when they're in charge. But that bill came through the Senate, but it never passed the Senate, so it never even got to the House. So in that particular bill, and I read it with my staff, like the debt ceiling bill, there were good ideas in the debt ceiling bill, but on the next page you would see, oh, there's the loophole that totally skirts around the good idea. That bill was the same way. So it was essentially, when you read it, there would be a good idea on page 1, but then on page 2, there was a loophole that would give Secretary Mayorkas, for example, carte blanche to do whatever he wanted. There were loopholes on every other page, and so it really wasn't worth the paper it was printed on, wasn't going to do what it was intended. And one of the, I think, fascinating lies about that bill is that it was technically a mass amnesty bill. And the other thing that they said that they claimed the bill did, both sides said, and it wasn't true, that if more than 5,000 people crossed the border illegally, they would shut the border down. Raise your hand if you've ever seen the border shut down. It's never been shut down, and it's never going to be shut down unless you have a wall and gates that people have to go through, like other foreign countries. But it's never been. That's not a thing. It's so again, it's like it's fuzzy math. It's telling a narrative that isn't true. And my problem is the lack of honesty, the lack of integrity, and the lack of truth. Just tell the people the truth, and then they can decide for themselves if that bill really is what you say it is. Because oftentimes it's not. What Washington likes to do too is they'll title a bill, oh, this is rainbows and unicorns for all people. And then you read it has nothing to do with rainbows and unicorns, right? And so there's just a lot of, I think, performance and magic. You know, it's not what it is. And so I like to call it out. I'll read through the bills and say, this is what it does and this is what it does not do, with no flourishes. Just this is just black and white. This is what it is. And I think we need more people that will just, this is literally what it does and nothing else. And don't put opinion on it. Let the people decide.
With the performances, like in politics that you're talking about, right? So like, how does it work with you? Like so for instance, if Kamala Harris is elected president and you have to work with her, there has been times like the CNN moment where you got in trouble for saying her name wrong and people were upset about that. And then, you know, that whole thing. Kamala doesn't know what a woman is, those remarks. How do you then sit with her? Like, do you guys have conversations behind closed doors first to get all that out the way so you can work together, or does that not even come up? Like, how do you remove the performance that happens?
Yeah, so I'm always willing to work with anyone who's willing to work with me. And oftentimes if staff are open to working together, like I have a rule in my office that we don't We don't block anything. If someone wants to do business with us, if someone wants to work with us, regardless of party or political affiliation, we will do it. I mean, I've sponsored bills with progressives. I've sponsored bills with people on the Freedom Caucus. So all the folks. But I mean, in that particular instance, I felt like I was being ganged up on air. A lot of people haven't been able to say her name right because her name wasn't been in the news every day. I know how to say it now. It's Kamala. I've got it down. I've got it right.
You got it, girl. Go ahead.
But one of my issues too was being ganged up on as a woman live on air, and then the hypocrisy during the commercial breaks of, hey, can I grab a selfie? And I don't mind it. We'll have the colloquy on air, and you do whatever you want to do. But then behind the scenes, send me a kissy emoji, tell me how gorgeous I am, tell me we look good together, and all that whole thing, because it was just kind of an act. And so it's like, I'm just going to call it for what it is. I was probably the first person in Congress that entered into the congressional record a text with a kissy emoji.
Why
so
there? Like, why?
Because they kept saying, I was saying I'm racist because I'm saying her name wrong, but Bill Clinton calls her Kamala. Joe Biden says Kamala. It's not the right way of pronouncing it.
Yeah, you understand like the context behind that.
I do.
Not the 100.
Yeah,
but as a person that works in civil rights and all that stuff, you get where they were coming from.
Absolutely. But I also wasn't going to be bullied. Like I am you can fight or flight. I'm going to fight. Absolutely. And I will always fight back.
I don't think it was a mispronunciation. It was when you said,
I'll say her name however I want
I
to.
can say it however I want to. And I was like, Nancy had a drink.
I did not. I did
Nancy
not. But during the commercial breaks, you know how it is. You're taping and you're doing this, and it was just the hypocrisy was what was grating me, because behind the scenes on commercial break, begging for the selfie picture, hitting on me, all that stuff, and I was like, okay, this is.
Oh, so that happened, and then y'all came back.
Yes. Yes, it was all going on at the same time, and so that's why I was just like, okay, it's not okay to label somebody and gang up on them in public, but then have a completely different position in private. I don't like hypocrisy, and I don't like people who aren't being honest. And so that's what I do when I call them out. And I'm always, if someone's going to come at me or try to intimidate me, I'm the last one that you should do that to. I'm from Goose Creek. So you can take the girl out of Goose Creek, but you cannot take Goose Creek out of the girl. I'm a fighter, and I always will be.
Did you see Doc's, he responded to you, and that's just how he talks to people, to women.
Maybe he shouldn't. Maybe he should work on that, because I think it was highly inappropriate. And I think it's, again, for me, it was just pointing out the hypocrisy, because I see it all the time in Washington. People will say one thing when they're on air or they're on Twitter, and then privately they're acting like something else. And that's not okay. Roques is not one of those people. He's what you see is what you get. When I talk to him privately, he's the exact same guy on TV. Exact same guy. And we need more of that, not less.
Talk about the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act, because some people say, you say you're a champion of women, but you voted against that.
Yeah, well, I voted for a clean reauthorization. So the first one that came through had some, I believe, like red flag laws that they were putting into it. And I think we have to balance constitutional Second Amendment rights with violence against women. And so I voted for a clean reauthorization of that bill. And in fact, I've gone back since then, because when I dove into, I just got through a domestic abusive relationship. There was domestic violence, and I went through the system, and I was like, wow, this is how women are treated. And I learned about the Violence Against Women Act, what it did to protect victims' rights, and also what our state does to protect victims' rights. And I realized there's even more we can do. So since that time, I have created legislation. One in particular, there's a revenge porn civil tort within the Violence Against Women Act, but it's only
That's in
civil.
there? Revenge porn?
Yeah, it's civil. It's civil, not criminal.
Oh, gotcha.
So it didn't make it a crime at the federal level. So I have a bill that would fix that. There's a civil tort that would allow you to have a civil right of action for revenge porn at $150,000. So I have a bill that would increase it to $500,000. There was nothing in there about voyeurism. So I have a bill. Voyeurism is when you record someone without their knowledge or consent or permission in an intimate way. I think Erin Andrews, when she was recorded changing clothes in her hotel room, voyeurism. But voyeurism wasn't included in it. So I have legislation that would add a voyeurism component, both a civil tort to be able to sue someone civilly in federal court, and also make it a crime at the federal level, because voyeurism is only a crime at the federal level for under Title 18 for tribal lands and certain maritime jurisdictions, aka cruises. So if it's good enough for those areas, let's make it a federal crime everywhere. So I've gone back and I'm doing things to actually strengthen it now that I've learned so much about how victims' rights are and are not protected and what it does and does not include. And I like to do small bills that will make a big difference. A lot of times people will do really large comprehensive bills and they'll put things in there that people can't agree to. I like smaller bills that are up and down. So these are all different pieces of legislation that will hopefully get an up or down vote. And if you disagree on something, you have a chance to say no. I don't like these big Christmas tree bills, but let's do one thing at a time and have small parts. Small bills make a really big difference.
I wonder if the older people in Washington understand things like what you're talking about in regards to like the social media aspect of it all. Because we live in a different world.
Yeah.
I feel like
totally.
it should be a crime to record somebody.
It should be.
Against their will. If you're having sex with them or whatever it is, like revenge porn, I feel like those are crimes.
They are. They should be. They should be.
Secretly taping phone calls, all that, I think it's a crime.
Yeah. But I mean, in the Violence Against Women Act, it only made it a civil tort. It didn't make it a crime at the federal level. Well, I aim to fix that. So
that's why you voted against it.
Well, no, there were red flag laws.
Okay.
So there, so I balance constitutional rights with women's rights, all those things. But I have different legislation that addresses each of those issues, and I'm doing it separately because there are some people that might vote against it for one reason or another. But I want these bills to have the best chance possible. So I've broken them up, and so I have this portfolio of legislation that would enhance and tighten and strengthen women's rights and protecting women under violence against women. I've been working on it for a while.
See, I understand that because I think about when they talk about Bernie Sanders and why they said Bernie voted. I think he voted for the '94 crime bill. I forgot what bill it was, but he voted for it. But the reason he said he voted for it wasn't because of the crime bill; it was because of something else that was in it. It was some type of violence against women. My point with that is, you'll see the big bill presented, but it's like these little smaller things inside of them that you actually have to read to, I guess, know whether you agree with the whole thing. I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I prefer not to have these giant bills. Let's have up or down key votes on them so that you can see you have the best chance of it passing. When you do these massive bills, things get snuck in, and you're like, what did we just pay for? I mean,
why do they do that though?
I don't know. We have these giant spending bills, these continuing resolutions or omnibuses. The DC will manufacture some sort of crisis. Government's going to shut down if we don't do this. And so then they have these giant spending bills, and all of a sudden you realize your tax dollars are going to pay for trans kid clothing. I mean, things that most people would not want to agree with. Or this is what happened last year. It's just, what did we just spend money on? I voted for gay marriage twice, but I don't think you should be spending federal government money on just gay nursing homes. I think go to all nursing homes, right? Why are we just specifying?
That thing, gay nursing homes?
Yeah, there was $1 million last year. I mean, I didn't know there was a thing. There were gay nursing homes apparently, but
y'all better watch what y'all said. They're gonna use y'all in another ad.
I don't want tax. I don't want tax dollars paying to incentivize illegal immigration. I mean, there's just things that I think common sense wise, we don't need to be paying for. Government doesn't need to be paying for sex change surgery. I mean, just those things will get stuffed in there if you don't read the fine print. And that's why I vote against almost all of the fine print when it comes to the big spending bills, because they're just ridiculous things in there that you and I, both sides would say, the average bear would be like, the average person would be like, why are we doing this? Why do we vote for that?
I would love to talk to somebody from the LGBTQ community, and why do they need a gay assisted living community? I just want to know, like what's the difference between a gay assisted living community and a regular one?
I don't know.
Because Envy's getting up in age. I will send him there, but I just want to know why. What's the difference?
I don't understand. Let's just, if you're going to do one thing for one sector, just do it for all. I mean, I like no taxes on tips. I like no taxes on Social Security. Let's just reduce all taxes for everybody. We are all a big fan of keeping more of our hard-earned dollars to then reinvest into the economy.
So, I looked it up, and the reason why you have it is because as people of the LGBTQ plus community get older, they face different things like discrimination. Like some nursing homes won't let same-sex partners come and visit them. Just a cultural shift. Well,
that's crazy, because that whatever state has that law, we need to fix it. Because the government shouldn't tell you who to love. And I mean, that's.
And people want to live in a community where they can feel accepted and they don't have to hide who they are, because there are still numbers of communities that, there are people that hide their sexuality up until this age. So it sounds like a good idea to me.
To have its own facility?
Yeah, I think so.
Nah, I think that you should have laws that probably reduce bias and discrimination.
But you have laws
should the federal government pay for it? I think is the bottom line. I would argue no. It's a private entity sort of thing.
The only reason why I would not agree is because there are laws that protect people in the LGBTQ plus community from certain things every day right now, and the discrimination still happens. So it's like just putting a law in place doesn't always work, but having a place where you feel community might work.
Yeah, so I've worked on legislation to support the LGBT community. So I don't have with laws, they're everyone, human rights, basic civil rights, etc. But from my perspective, I don't want the government paying for that. That should be something done in the private sector, not a government run thing or government funded thing. It should be done with.
When things hit the private sector though, isn't it less money there? Like it's harder, like funding is less.
I think it's actually more
less
efficient because when the federal government gets involved, things become slower, more archaic. There are more regulations, which means the cost of it goes up. Because we burden industry with enormous regulations. Every time there's a new regulation, the cost of doing business increases, making the end cost of the consumer more expensive. And that's the way it is in healthcare, medicine, our defense. The cost for us to build a Navy warship versus other countries because of the bureaucracy and the red tape that we jump through to do things. We're slower, we're more expensive, and if we operated more like a business, we'd be more efficient with tax dollars, we'd be more nimble, we'd be faster and more innovative too. And I think it's across the board.
And by what you just read, Lauren, shouldn't all minorities be able to get their own anything and let the government pay for it then? Because we all experience bias, we all experience prejudice, whether you're black, whether you're women. For what?
Yeah, but we do ask for that, right? And it doesn't always happen, but yeah, I think so. Like there's certain things that I feel like in certain communities that are specific to a certain community should be funded by the government and given money to by the government. The same way we like HBCUs.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm
in.
talking about as far as like the gay assisted living thing. You said it's because of the bias and discrimination they experience.
Yeah.
Well, what about us as black people? Or what about women? Like shouldn't they?
I'm not disagreeing with you. I think it should.
I don't want to be in an assisted living home when I get older. Just for the record,
I don't think
I want to take care of myself.
If you have to
I hope
go,
I don't have
you
to.
can't take care. Somebody got to take care of you, your kids. But hopefully, but if you get to that point where you need to go to an assisted living home because you don't have anybody, wouldn't it be nice to feel like these are my people?
You want to be at a black one is what you're saying.
Take
like
me to
HBCU.
HBCU
assisted living.
Yeah. But no, I'm going to have my twins. They're going to take care of me.
She doesn't have him yet.
Not yet.
She doesn't have him yet.
I hope and pray my kids will take care of me. I keep telling them. They're teenagers right now.
I got 6 of them, so one of them.
Oh, my goodness.
You're running for first district seat in South Carolina. What's the top issues in the district? Because we're on the Z93 jams in South Carolina.
Yeah, so inflation and spending. When you go to the grocery store, a carton of eggs is going to cost you $6 or $7. Gallon of milk is up. Everything's up. Baby formula up huge. Gas, everything's more expensive. And so that's on the ballot right now. I'm in a purple district. I mean, it's very swing district, but as the number one issue for voters. The second issue is the immigration issue. We've had issues with fentanyl in South Carolina. We're having an issue right now with the Charleston County Sheriff, Kristen Graziano, letting these criminals back out onto the street, including just this week, ICE picked up a guy who was charged with sex crimes. It was here in South Carolina illegally. She let back out on the street. Doesn't help ICE. One of the last illegals she let out in Charleston County in August, he was an alleged pedophile who tried to pay to have sex with a kid twice. So illegal immigration is absolutely on the ballot. It's an 80-20 issue. Republicans and Democrats agree about it about 80% of the time together. Women's issues. Abortion and women's rights is absolutely on the ballot in my district. And I've worked really hard on all of those things. I blame Republicans and Democrats for inflation because neither one want to take responsibility. They're all drunk with spending. They're spending way more than we have, way more than taxpayers give them. And then on the immigration issue, you've got one side that wants amnesty, the other one wants a wall, but there's a lot of common ground in the middle, and very little has been done about it over the last couple of years. And then women's issues, I've been the most vocal Republican on women's issues in the country, I would argue. It's really important for my party to show women that we care, and it's been lonely, but I've been working really hard to show that you can be both pro-life and pro-woman and do the right thing. And again, there's so much middle ground that we're unwilling to recognize, that both sides are unwilling to recognize. But I'm doing it all the time. I'm doing it till I'm blue in the face because it means, for me, women's issues, it's not political, it's personal because of my trauma, my personal trauma that I've had in life. I want to fix the system.
And you call it drunk with spending, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you say to people who say, yo, they got all this money for war, they got all this money for the border, but they don't ever have money for us, the American people. What do you say to them?
It's BS is what it is. It's bullshit. I mean, I talked to a family the other day that had a place in Tennessee. They applied for the $750 thing, and they got turned down within an hour, and they have thousands of dollars of damage at their property. You know, but this stuff goes on. Like, you know, I've got a bill right now that we're going to vote on when we're back in session. Both Republicans and Democrats alike voted for about $1.45 billion for FEMA that would go to a shelter and services program to house and feed illegal immigrants. That is a thing. It's a fact. They voted on it twice. So I have a bill that would take, if there are any unspent funds from that bucket in that FEMA budget, that would then go to Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton victims. That would be common sense. That would be the right thing to do. So I'm trying to do my part in a common sense way.
Well,
so tomorrow's election day. So what's your message to people?
We're asking people to get out and have their voices heard and to vote. And we need as many people to come out and vote on election day. It's your right as a citizen, and we want to make sure that your voices are heard. The polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. in South Carolina.
Okay.
all right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Nancy Mace, ladies and gentlemen, and we appreciate you for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And it's The Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.